good. Let's leave it, everybody. I think I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, at 6:32 on January 31st. This is the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee of Wenham. This meeting is being run remotely over Zoom. And if we do have any technical difficulties, we will just have to try to deal with them or resume our meeting. Thank you, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay.
Doing well? Good.
Yeah. Sorry about last week, last minute cancellation. It was out of my control.
Gonna happen to all of us sooner or later. So I'm glad we had some flexibility in the calendar, so we're not gonna have to rush things. We could just say, yep, sorry, that didn't work, and here we are tonight. I do see some public people here. Anybody like to open up with public comment from anybody in attendance on the line tonight?
Raise their hand if they would like to make a public comment.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's see, I'm not seeing any, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, let's just move right on to our agenda. I'd like to turn it over to Janet and Catherine, who've been working on this CPA administrator discussion. And if they have an update or what the next steps are, please advise.
Janet?
Oh, Catherine, I was hoping you would do that.
Oh, I'm happy to.
Well, would you? That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. We just we did update the job description. Most remarkably, I guess, that we added a salary and some a potential for hours worked. It's kind of I hope people have had a chance to take a little bit of a look at it. It's really kind of a seasonal situation where they work more hours during the times for 10 months of the year and fewer hours for part of the year. I think at this point we've gone as far as we probably can with it ourselves. So I think, and Janet, tell me if I'm wrong on this, I think we need to have some input. So people on the committee really need to read this and give us any input they have, and they can send it to Joe, because there's not too much more that we can do. I think it's pretty well set from our point of view, but there are some, there might be some comments or questions. We haven't changed too much substantively from what's been in here before. Really just added, as I said, salary, hours. So I think that's it. Is that it, Jen?
Yeah, I think that is accurate, and maybe we just need to all take a look at it and confirm that you like what we've come up with and go from there.
I have a question.
I see Trudy's hand. Yeah.
So was all of that in the last meeting's packet? Because I don't think we got a packet for tonight's meeting. So are we using the same packet from last week?
Yes, actually, we had updated it right just before our last meeting. So what's in the packet is the latest
Correct
version.
Thank you.
Right.
Correct.
So I'm going to say this is last and final call. If you want input on the direction of the CPC administration job, you need to get it to Joe this week by Monday. And we can then, I think, call our next agenda item to be final discussion and vote on this moving forward. I just want to get us all on the same page with it.
Right.
Read it through. You're going to be asked questions if this comes up at town meeting. And so we do need to be at least rudimentarily aware of what's going to be in this position. Make sense, folks? Leo.
Yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't at last meeting, and my input, if I can have a minute, just a minute or two, is that I've been on this committee for quite a while, probably more than most members, and only because the Conservation Commission puts me on it each time. Every time, nobody else from the commission wants to be on it, so here I am, and I value my membership on this commission because I'm voting on spending the town money. Now, the CPA, we've had it in town for almost 2 decades, I'd say 18 years. And in all that time, we've only had probably at the most 100 applications and grants. And a good 20% of those were with the town hall, which is cut and dry. So that only leaves 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 grants each year. And in the past, for 5 or 6 or 7 grants, we didn't need a coordinator. This is just going to take several $1,000s out of our kitty that we would be able to give to some deserving entity in town each year. And plus, I think it only adds to the bureaucracy that's unnecessary. I really believe that, but especially it's going to take $10 or $15 or $20,000 away from the bucket that we can award to some deserving entity. Even the town of Boston, their city of Boston, their CPA accumulates about 20 million each year. Ours is less than $1 million probably. And they only have 1 coordinator. So I know that's my 2 cents worth, but I really think that it's money that we could be given to a deserving entity in town. I really believe that. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your comments. Trudy, I'd like somebody to, I will recognize Trudy. I would like somebody from the group that's working on that, even from the administration perspective, from Joe, to kind of just maybe fill Leo in a little bit more. And then we can go to Trudy, or Trudy, are you going to fill in for that?
I was going to say, Leo, I kind of agree, but at the same time, we have in the past paid somebody to do some of the admin work that needs to be done. I believe also the requirements have changed on CPC over the years as far as reporting that goes into the state. Maybe it hasn't, maybe the prior person just took care of it. I don't know, but we're all volunteers on this board. Most of us work full time. So some of us don't have time to do the copying of these applications and distributing them. And Joe does not get paid by this because he already has a full-time job. So I think we do need somebody to help us out and let Joe get back to some other things if we've got somebody who can fill in and take part-time hours.
Can I just make a clarification for Leo's sake? Thank you,
Please.
Trudy. So we have had, I've not been on the CPC, but I've obviously observed it from a number of years. And there has always been a coordinator. Without using names, the last person before Joe started doing this, we had a person who was doing permitting and a million other things, and also did this job exactly, pretty much this job. So we've always had a coordinator. And Joe, when Joe came, he sort of, inherited the job of coordinating and is paid a salary through the town. So this is, I think this is the way I understand this. Joe would have the ability to step off of what he's doing. Perhaps I don't think he could be completely uninvolved because he is the assistant town administrator and Steve some administration. But this is an administrator will be doing work that's already being done. Only it will be done using CPC money and under the auspices of the CPC. Does that make sense? So we're not duplicating anything. Not proposing to duplicate anything.
It does make sense. And Stuart, who's the person that we have talked to a lot about this, has said that someone like Joe, this is definitely no offense to Joe, because he's been over the top helping us, that is not part of his job, and that we need to use some of our money, a very small amount, and have someone do the work that Joe has been thankfully doing for us. And he's done way more than I would ever have expected. He's saved us, even Catherine and I, just with coming up with this job description. Joe has saved us so much time. But according to Stuart, we need to have somebody that's being paid to do this job.
The thing is, paid to do this job, we just can't put a fund. We just can't say, here's $10,000, sweep it. There has to be a direct correlation between the funding that comes out of the CPC and a position. Now, I guess we could reduce Joe's salary for 10 or 12 hours a week and carve out that time for an existing or another existing person. It doesn't have to be Joe. It could be another existing person, but we have to have a direct correlation between the CPC funding and the hours worked. So that's part of what we're trying to come up to speed with. Does that make sense
And
to
we're-
the?
And actually, Rick, you're right. And what we're trying to do is come up with a specific job description which meets the criteria that across the state, and that's what we're doing. Specific things that we need to have done that only have to do with our committee.
How long has Joe been doing this coordination we're talking about?
I can answer that. Yeah, just from pretty much when I started with the town, working for the town of Wenham, I would say October of 2022.
Yeah. And
But it was before Joe. Ever since I've been involved in town hall, we have had someone on staff who has spent some number of hours doing this job description. I don't know if I can say how many hours. We don't even really know if what we put in here is the right number of hours. But there's been someone doing all of these tasks, and they, as Janet said, they need to be done. So,
Right. And can I just jump in real quick?
Catherine, I know it has to be done, and someone on staff has been doing them, but usually I understand it's been hourly workers. So if it involved more time, it was more pay. It was extra hours. I would have thought.
Well, this will be an hourly job, Leo. We have Catherine and I, with Joe's help, have put together a proposal, which, as Rick just said, everyone needs to look at this and let's just finalize this and let's make a decision. It will be hourly, and it is for very small percentage. It's not a lot of money. Correct me, Catherine, if I'm wrong, it's under $20,000, right?
there's a lot, yes.
And that would be the maximum amount of money that it would be. Because the way it's laid out, when you look at what you have seen that we put together, it's up to X number of hours in off season, for lack of a better word, up to X number of hours during the busy time. So the maximum it would be $20,000. But Stuart has also told us that we cannot, in fact, use someone who is full-time already, such as Joe or someone else, and say, oh, okay, they're going to do some of this work. We need to use our money to pay for this. One of the things is we've always had someone who did minutes. We don't have that anymore. So part of this job will be taking minutes.
I'm not going to belabor the point, committee. I just know that the funds we have now, because the match is not nearly the percentage match we have now is not nearly the percentage match it's been in previous years. That's what made me think that there's less need for and as far as less need for a coordinator, and as far as bureaucracy, for what it's worth, I think Mr. Saginaw is the perfect picture of bureaucracy. I've had dealings with him over the last 18 years, so I rest my case. Thank you for listening.
Thank you
for listening.
Thanks,
to me.
Leo.
Thank you. Yeah, the goal here is to try to educate educate everybody so we can make the best decision that we can. Steve, do you still have a comment to weigh in on?
No, I think it pretty much cleared up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, folks. So please, as I said, this is the last and final call. If you'd have input, speak to Joe and he'll get that distributed to the appropriate people. We may have to do a little swap around here. I think we're waiting
Tricia has her
for,
hand up.
oh, who does? I'm sorry. Patricia?
It's okay. I was just gonna say, and this is maybe where the administrator comes in, but I do wonder if like we should be developing like the talking points as we prepare for town hall. I mean, Leo, I think it's a great question, and it's likely the same one that we're gonna get throughout this process of finding someone. So I do think I was just jotting down some notes of what y'all said. So maybe that would be a helpful thing as we prep for the spring. So side note on the
I think that's a great idea. We'd like to drive that a little bit, like we have people working on the
sure.
actual position. Maybe you
yeah.
could work with those folks that are working on the position to start talking about, can be informal, don't have to be like meeting crazy.
Oh, no,
But
that's good. I'm just happy to draft some notes. It's good.
I try to get people involved because then you take ownership, right? And it's going to be an interesting town meeting as always. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I don't see anybody from KP Law on the line yet. Still planning on that, Steve, or?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Sorry, I just texted her saying that you guys were running a little ahead of schedule like 3 minutes ago. So
Okay, no worries. So we're gonna,
hop
thank
on
you.
early.
So I think what we might do, up to a vote here, just shake your heads yes or no. We could listen to the cemetery fund
Good idea.
first. Is that okay? We'll go with that.
Let's
'cause I
just
see
do
him
that.
here.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, are you ready to do a little overview of your project? You'll probably need to unmute yourself, or you're probably just lurking. Oh, for the note taker, could you please note that Ms. Anderson joined the meeting? I didn't get a time.
Hopefully that starts the things up here.
Great. Yeah, you are now
there-
on.
Okay, good.
Thank
Hi,
you.
And
Hey, Bill.
evening, everybody. I have some charts here. Joe, can you bring those up?
Sure. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Good to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Take it away, Bill.
Okay, hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for letting me join. My name's Bill Wilson. I'm the chair of the Wenham Cemetery Commission, also on the Veterans Committee. But what I'd like to talk to you tonight about is the restoration and repair of the Main Street Cemetery granite wall, which is a historic preservation. I think everybody's seen it. As you come into town, it's very noticeable on the right-hand side. So next chart, please. So what I'll talk about tonight is just give you a quick overview of the granite wall, what we know about it. Talk about the Historic District Committee meeting that we had. It's in the Historic District. So we need buy-in from those folks that we're doing the right things. We're not doing things improperly, get their approval. I'll talk about CDC considerations, what you folks deem important when you allocate funds for these types of things. And just wrap it up with a couple, with a summary and any questions you may have. Next chart. So the picture on the left is a 1893 picture looking down Main Street. You can see the telephone on the left-hand side. It says Enon Street. Goes down to Massasoit Hotel. That's really Lake Ave. And actually, I live down that street now. So it's very picturesque, old railroad street going down there. And you can see the cemetery wall on the right-hand side over there. So it's been around for quite a while. I did get some new information before I made these charts up there, but it appears the wall was built in 1847. Apparently Edmund Kimball, who was an 1812 veteran, requested permission from the town to, quote, to build a more permanent wall at his own expense. And I believe he did that. I don't have any more details besides that accusation. But it's 177 years old if you use that. The panel on the right is another picture about the same time frame. And there used to be a mile marker out in front that around 1700 that marked the distance to Ipswich and to Boston. Ipswich was 7, Boston was 20 miles. It has been moved back and is really now part of the cemetery wall. You walk by there, you can see it there. So the wall is quite old, quite historic, and resides within the historic district of the town of Wenham. Next chart. So background, I've already talked about that. It's in the historic district, but it's really a significant part of the town history. It's been around since the early 1700s. The landscape, as it's grown through the years, as more people were buried there. Archaeological, there's a lot of information there of people that have passed. Even back to the witch trial, there was one gentleman there that was part of it. And the culture, that's a center piece of the town. We have the Memorial Day parade where it goes into the cemetery. So it's part of the town. Historic landmark, I see it as a gateway into the town of Wenham. And it's historic in the sense that just on the other side of that wall, there's 31 Revolutionary War veterans that are buried there, each flagged out by the Veterans Committee. And we would like this to look nice for the 250th anniversary coming up here. It's in decline right now, and we have an opportunity to make it look shipshape, for lack of a better term here, before the big event there. So how big is it? It's around 600 feet long. Average height is around 32 inches. And the current assessment, constant decline with failing mortar joints here. What happens in the summertime is the mortar cracks out, weeds grow in, and then they reside there all summer, grow, crack it out more. And then in the wintertime, water gets in between the granite blocks, breaks it up, the mortar starts to fall out, and then the cycle repeats itself. More weeds, more freezing, declining mortar. More weeds, more freezing, and it just looks terrible. I think of nothing more depressing than seeing a cemetery that goes into decline and is not maintained by the townspeople. And if we don't take corrective action now, this cemetery is going to take on that aura, I think, with the weeds in the wall there. Next chart. So what's it look like there? Panels on the left-hand side there, you can see the some of the work that DPW has done on the upper left there. It looks kind of, they did the best they could to try and repair some of the failing mortar on the entryway there. It was satisfactory, but doesn't look good. You can see the missing mortar on some of the blocks there. It goes all the way down, the full 551 feet there. Some is good, some is not good. So DPW does some temporary stuff, great, glad to help them, but it would take a real mason professional to go in there and do this job and make it right. Next chart. So we met with the Historic District Commission on the 19th December last year there, talked about the scope, restoration, kind of the same charts we're looking at right now. Their concern is a wall visible from the public way. We discussed that. They're kind of their charter to kind of rule on that. We received their full approval from HCC to proceed with the restoration or repair of the granite wall. I think their only comment was that they wanted the mortar to be consistent with the mortar that's in there right now. A lot of times you'll see when they do the repair, some of the mortar is white, some of it's gray, try and do a consistent look was their only comment going forward. Next chart. Joe.
Can you guys see that goals benefits budget?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, things you folks think about, CPC considerations. Our goals, 3-point repair the Main Street Cemetery wall from further degradation. Benefits is just to make it look like a historic cemetery and a symbol of the town of Wenham. We don't want it to be in the greatest state. We want it to look good. And success is going to be measured by viewing it noting consistent, beautifully maintained green wall, marking the cemetery, entryway to downtown Wenham. We want to reflect who we are. Budget 17K will be a competitive bid, and it's expected to take around 30 days. Funding, I tried to count capital requests last year and didn't make the cut. And I think we're a deserving entity, as Leo had put it in his opening remarks there. And actually, I really didn't know much about CPC funding, that things that could be considered that you could get an award for. But yeah, I'm here this year to submit it for 2024 and see what we can do. Next chart. Timeline, given the go-ahead, we would solicit bids on Combi, which is what Massachusetts uses for their official procurement record system. We put out bids and people would come back and say they could do it for this and for that. So we would do that. It would be a competitive bid process. Implementation, Cemetery Commission will be responsible for the project in concert with DPW Director Rick Souza. I would be the project manager. I think I'm qualified to do this one here. Retired naval officer, retired program manager with a Raytheon company. I think this one's not too difficult. I've already pre-coordinated with the DPW Director, Rick Souza. So Rich Souza, so he's all good with this stuff. No maintenance required for this. We do it on an as-need basis right now. If there's damage, whatever it is, I can call DPW up, they'll come over and they kind of fix it up and make it look nice here. But CPC funding would not be part of the maintenance. Next chart. So summary, wrap it up. It's a granite wall represents a significant part of the town history, landscape, archaeology, and culture. I mean, it's a big deal. Great way to the town. It's in constant decline. Failing mortar joints is just going to get worse if we just don't do anything. And it's going to have that abandoned appearance, which we want to try and avoid. Restoration will enhance the appearance, stop the degradation. I have a procurement memo already prepared and a modest budget proposed. So seeking CPC approval to move forward with the project. Next chart. And this is open to the committee there for any questions they may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, very much for that presentation. It was clear, concise, and now I'd like to see if anybody here on the committee has a few questions, and I see Alden with his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Bill, thank you very much for the presentation. It's just not clear. Is this a full mortar removal and replacement, or is it spot work?
The way it works out is you get a professional mason that gets in there. He takes a hammer, goes in and removes the loose mortar that's cracked, whatever it is, pulls it out. There will be some good mortar that he wouldn't do, but he would patch those areas where the mortar has cracked out and seal it up. So I'm not sure what the percentage is. 50% would stay, 50% would take new mortar. Not clear to me. I did have a gentleman come out there and give me some guidance on this, so I don't come in cold on the whole thing here. So I've given a professional guy came in here, told me what he thought and things like that, and we came up with some sort of number that may be representative.
Yeah, and I think the Historic District Commission made a very valuable comment about matching color.
Yes.
How closely can the mortar colors be matched?
They can.
If it's not a full removal and replacement, if it's just, spots and runs, and then some areas are intact and they're left, how closely can it be matched?
Fairly closely. I think there is dyes that you can buy to add to the concrete as you mix it to try and get the colors right. It's not like you just take one bag, throw it in a wheelbarrow, throw some water in, and that's it. They can color it to try and get it to the right color.
And a professional mason knows how to do that for optimum aesthetic quality.
I do it at Home Depot. I go buy the dye and try and get the colors right when I repoint the chimney that I have.
Thank you.
I saw another hand, Leo.
William, I think this is a very worthy project that probably should have been done sooner. And I'm glad you mentioned the color aspect, because about 40 years ago, it was pointed. And somehow they used white mortar.
Yeah.
And for several years, in fact, quite a while, it was obtrusive. It was ugly until that either chipped out or blended in. So I'm glad you mentioned the color. That's important.
Yep.
And I think it's an important project. Is just like Wenham Lake. It's one of the first things you see when you enter Wenham on a main road. Thank you.
Catherine?
Just one question, Bill. Having worked with some masons, how comfortable are you with the budget? And I'm only saying that because it seems rather low for the work that needs to be done. I just want to make sure you're requesting the money that's needed to actually do the job, so it can be done completely.
Good point. When I called in the Mason to try and give me some guidance, he gave me a number. I've escalated that, I think 15% to come up with this number there. But what I'm concerned about now is the color matching, which I don't have any number on. Is that gonna make this number low? I mean, too low, that when they come in with new bids, they're gonna be higher than that. So that's the only thing that I'm not concerned about, but I need to address. If we were to, maybe go to 20K or something like that, and then see where it comes in there for a little bit of a cushion, if you want to call it that, might be a prudent thing to do.
Yes, you don't have to spend the whole grant request.
Say again, excuse me?
You don't have to spend your entire grant request.
You don't.
Right.
You just have to, don't come back for more money. You don't have to spend it all.
We have some unfortunate past history with cemetery work that couldn't be completed with the money that we had. I still have a little PTSD about that, and it is a beautiful wall, and it should be professionally. If we're going to do anything, it should be professionally done. I agree with the color matching. So, if I think the process is, if you wanted to make an adjustment there, just to contact Rick, Joe, whatever,
yes,
and make that adjustment before we deliberate and vote. I guess, is that right?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, the deliberations start next week, so if you could just take a few minutes and review your number and get some input from others if you need it to increase
Bill,
it. I think to send it to Joe would be the best thing. I try to focus everything on him because he's in town hall.
So Bill, later I'm going to call you and get the name of that mason, because I'd like him to do some work at those rates.
Yeah, no, he was good. Actually, Rick Souza knew him, a guy in Danvers he knew, and he came out and talked to me and did all this stuff there. So yeah, he was
great.
He was, a good guy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? Well, great. I want to thank Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Bill, for coming in tonight out of your private time and speaking with us about your project. And we look forward to your update, and we'll be deliberating, as we said, starting next week.
Okay, that's fine. I'll have something this week then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at my agenda. So let's go back a little bit now. I think we have the time, and I do see. I think I see Ms. Goldberg here. Yep. So the group had some specific questions around financing of bond issuing. And I think, Steve, if you want to just maybe recap the questions that were asked to make sure that we're all in agreement as they were, and then maybe a discussion can ensue and Ms. Goldberg's expertise can be tapped.
Steve,
Oh, you're still muted, Steve.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember the questions specifically. I know that.
Okay, well, I had several directly from Stuart Saganor. His questions were, how do you bond for a property you don't know and you don't know the amount to be bonded? And I think specifically my request was for 2 to 3 examples of that where it's been done in CPC communities, and a written word from the law firm on how it's going to be done. So if we can, that I think was the main discussion points. There may be others that came up, but I know that was one of the things that was really on our minds last time.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to provide you with the information that I have. I spoke directly with bond counsel, reputable person with an exceptionally large bond counsel client community, and I outlined what I had discussed with the town administrator concerning identifying specific properties and a total amount of money that could be put towards purchase of one or more of those properties. And he had absolutely no problem with that. He said, you know, what he would have a problem with is if we didn't identify any properties, or if we said every property in the town of Wenham, because it basically means that it's an unidentified property. But he felt like listing 5 properties and authorizing a total borrowing amount would be consistent with what he's, you know, with him providing a go letter for the town.
I guess I'm gonna then ask, can he reference towns that have used CPC money, CPA money to do such a thing? Because the CPA coalition couldn't come up with any.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether any have or haven't, but it is consistently done that a particular property is authorized to be acquired with a dollar amount that's attached to it, and whether or not that property can be acquired is something that plays out over time. So similar to this, you know, where there's properties that the town knows it may want to acquire for open space purposes, you know, town meeting is just an authorizing entity, and that authorization gives the ability to acquire, but not the requirement. So adding another property or 2 or 3 to just one, he had no problem with.
All within the rules of the CPA. I mean,
Oh,
it's different if you're just spending town money, right?
Oh, no,
But we're also
no.
in this umbrella program that we have to be responsible to. So have you researched exactly, can a CPC or CPA do this?
Based on my knowledge of municipal finance and my discussion with the bond counsel I'm referencing, I have no question that the town can do this. Whether the town wants to or not is a policy question.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We just want to make sure it's legal.
And that's what I'm saying. That's a
Then
policy
back to
question.
my email to Steve Poulos. I want to get back to that. I asked for a written opinion from legal counsel, bond
I can give
counsel,
you a
whoever
written
wants to do
opinion.
it. Thank you.
Yep.
And also 2 or 3 examples where a CPC has approved their part of a CPC request, sent it off to town meeting without a named property and without an amount to be financed.
Well, my understanding.
We have both, Rick. We
You don't have an exact property name. You have a list of properties to pick from and an up to amount.
Yeah,
So-
the CPC appropriation, like if hypothetically, if you were to vote to recommend town meeting that we approve, or the CPC wants to fund $100,000 in debt service, that is going to equal a dollar amount over whatever term loan that you take. So similarly, you know, the range that I gave you is to give you the flexibility to decide what you're comfortable with, and that's the reason why it was stated in per $1 million borrowed. So, you know, so we have a dollar amount that would equal a capped borrowing, that would equal the cap placed on the selectman authorization warrant.
Thank you. I think I have my questions answered, so I'm going to open up now to everybody else on the floor. Ms. Harrison.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you for coming. So I have a question, and you might not wish, I think Steve might not wish to answer or may not be able to answer it. I think maybe everyone agrees that there's the simple way of having this is to have a property and an amount, because you know that's easy to explain and all of that. So are we in a situation where we may have a property, but we don't have it yet, and we don't have an amount yet, and we can't really talk about it, which I can completely understand in real estate transactions? Or is this really something might come up in these 5 properties because they have greatest chance of coming up next. And I ask that because I think if this is an evolving situation, it may evolve quite far, maybe between now and town meeting, and we could take the more simple approach if we had more information as we go forward. I don't have I'm not deliberating here. I'm just trying to understand if it's just there's information, but we can't have it yet, or it's not it's a list.
And yeah, I mean, I'll speak to that. I can say that I think we all know the property that you're talking about, and that there has been no movement at all that gives any indication that the town will be participating in any negotiations or have the opportunity to purchase or otherwise, especially in the next 6 months. From what I've heard there, the heirs are still discussing it amongst themselves. They're not sure what they want to do. We've reached out to them, expressed that we're willing to help, let us know if there's anything we can do, and that's where it stands. Is not nothing more than that.
Okay, thank you.
And part of why I want this conversation to keep going is that I am of that. My thought is, let's string this out as long as we can, right? We don't have to, as a team, make a final decision until the day of town meeting on whether we're going to support this or not make an opinion. So the goal for everybody, I believe, is to try to get more information and try to get to the point where we can all have a safe decision. That's all. And I saw Trudy's hand was up next.
So I hope this isn't a stupid question, and I've watched the last two meetings, the recordings, and I may be misunderstanding something. Has the dollar amount changed that you're asking from CPC from the original application to a higher amount?
No.
Okay. All right. Because I thought I saw something recently about 2.7 million.
2.7 million. So on the application, there's two repayment options, 10-year and 20-year. One is 2.7 million. One was 1.7 million. So that's the maximum amount that the CPC could support in debt service over a given number of years. So 20 years, you can borrow more because your payments would be less. And that's the 2.7. And over 10 years, you could borrow less because the payments will be more, and you could support a $1.7 million total. So I think I tried to write the application in that, similar to West Wenham Park last year. They similar to the West Wenham Park last year, the CPC elected to reimburse a different amount. So this, I tried to put it in debt service per 1 million to kind of give the CPC members the ability to look at it and be like, all right, well, we don't want 2.7 is too much, but would be comfortable at 1.5, and you just multiply the factor times the annual debt service.
Okay, so just to follow up, nobody ever hires me for my math skills. I just want to say that right now. So I think I'm looking at the original application, and you've got the CPA funding requested up to 237,500, and then the total cost of the project is up to 2.7 million. Is that because of the bonding and the no better word than I can think of interest that's paid over?
Yeah, the total cost of the project is the amount of money you're borrowing. The 237 is the amount of money you're spending per year to service that loan.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I think I understand it. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Goldberg, I do see your hand up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also just be clear, if CPC recommended this to town meeting and town meeting voted in the affirmative, no borrowing would be done at that time. There would be no borrowing and no debt service because there'd be no particular property to buy. So the borrowing would be an authorization that would sit on the town's books, but it wouldn't come into being until and unless there was one of those 5 properties that became available for sale, and the select board moved forward.
So in other words, they don't get the money to put in their account. It just stays in CPC until the project becomes available.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, no money leaves the money that's earmarked for CPA projects. It's an appropriation on the books, but it wouldn't be expended, and it couldn't be expended until such time as the project went forward or the property was acquired.
Go ahead, Alden.
Okay, let's start. I saw Leo's hand first. Leo, please.
It sounds like what comes first, the horse or the cart. We've been, I don't think the town has acquired any open space since we bought the iron rail over 50 years ago. But the town of Ipswich has been very active, and they've bought several. And one of them that I am kind of familiar with is the Raymond property, which is several hundred acres, and it's bordered on Route 133, John Wise Avenue, and Argilla Road. And they received grants from the state. They received grants from the federal government. They had maybe a dozen abutters that threw in money themselves. And they must have had somebody that organized it. And somehow they were ready to go when the property came up. They, like us, probably had 120 days to decide, but somebody organized it, I guess, and they got it done. Now, I think we have to show that we're serious. We have to show the state people who grant money for these type of projects, and the feds who grant money for this type of projects. We have to show them that we're serious, that we have money to put aside, that we want land.
I hear you, but I think we're
And-
getting into the deliberation point now.
And
We're here
let
to
me
find
just
out whether
finish
this is
one
the
more
legal
minute.
thing to do.
The town has lost several pieces over the last few years. One of them was Spring Hill, that nobody approached the west, and we could have got that. That directly abuts Longham Reservoir, a drinking supply. We're just lucky that on the other side of Wenham Lake, Ice House Hill was bought by the Beverly Salem Water Board to avoid a building there. So
In the interest of
have to
keeping us
throw
moving,
at-
I get the history, but I want to be sensitive to our guests' time too.
all right.
Thank you. Other questions on whether this can be done or not? And while we have legal counsel here. Alden?
Yes, Ms. Goldberg, thank you for being here.
Of course.
In your comments just a moment ago, you stated that if the CPC recommends to town meeting, and if it is passed in the affirmative at town meeting, no borrowing will happen at this time until there is a specific project with a specific price. And then was it Trudy, I think, asked the question, or your comment spoke to something Trudy had said, that the CPC is not going to be actually transferring money into that account until the bonding actually happens.
Mhm.
So am I correct in understanding that what you're describing is really, it's a floating commitment, and it's with an undetermined time frame as to when it will be executed or actuated? So theoretically, if no properties become available, theoretically, if CPC recommends and town meeting approves, but there's no properties for 5 years, then in the interim 5 years, the CPC and the town meeting can fully expend the funds year by year, right? Because we're not putting them in a lockbox, to use a term that was used incorrectly many years ago. Is that correct, Ms. Goldberg?
Mr. Chair, through you. That is correct. What you'd be making, or what you'd be agreeing to do, is making a commitment to fund debt service if the properties were acquired, the property or properties were acquired. And under the CPA, if a borrowing is done under the Community Preservation Act, under Chapter 44B, Section 11, then the CPC is bound to recommend that the money needed for debt service be paid. So if, let's just say in the next 3 years, there's one of those properties comes up and the select board decides to acquire it, and authorizes the borrowing at that time for that particular property, then the CPC would be responsible for recommending the amount of money needed to pay the debt service for each year of the bond. But in the interim, it's something that you would keep, you wouldn't want to overextend the community preservation fund. So you would be aware that you had that outstanding obligation that could come due, but it wouldn't all come at once. And it would happen just each year. There'd be debt service to pay.
Okay, and while we've got you, I just want to ask a hypothetical, easy question, because I believe Steve 3 or 4 weeks ago made some comments and I was confused. Maybe you can help me understand. So hypothetically, if for any reason Wenham no longer has a CPC, when it comes time to execute a bond and make those annual recommendations for bond premium payments, the town is obligated because it's a general obligation bond, correct? The CPC does not have bonding authority. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please, Lauren.
Thank you. So basically, Chapter 44, Section 16 is how you rescind the Community Preservation Act. But DOR and its guidance says that the CPA surtax would need to be collected until such time as any bond that was acquired with that was authorized through the CPA was paid off. So you wouldn't be able to get rid of your community preservation surcharge until the bond was paid off with CPA monies.
Thank you. That's very clear. I really appreciate that. I'm not
Thank you.
advocating the abolition of CPC, but the
Right.
question was
Last
asked.
anyway.
It was an honest question, and it needed a clear answer, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you both.
Trudy, I see you next.
So, under CPC guidelines or rules, when a project has been approved and the work starts, is there a time limit on the project that it has to be, say, done within 3 years? Is that true? Or a time frame that it has to be done in? That's one question. If the answer is yes,
That
does
is a
that
question
mean-
I just asked Stuart Saginaw for an answer to. How,
Yeah,
what
there-
is the statute of limitations on that grant?
There is none. It's the agreement between the town and the, what, if we're giving money to a private entity, it's the agreement between the town and the private entity in the CPA grant agreement. There's nothing in state law that says that a particular project has to occur within any particular amount of time. Most times, just for your information, I see provisions requiring that work start in a certain number of years, or that the grant be no longer available, so that it must start within 3 years of the date of the town meeting vote or not be available any longer, rather than there be a sunset on when it must be completed.
Okay,
Just in
so if we approve this application and nothing we can't say if it doesn't happen in 3 years, you've lost the money.
So you could say that.
say that.
That would be part of whatever the authorizing vote would be.
Okay.
And that's what's called a sunset provision. And certainly the CPA can make that, the CPC can make that recommendation, and town meeting could approve that. The other thing is that, let's just say in 3 years, nothing has happened and the CPC feels that this is no longer the best approach. The CPC can recommend to town meeting to rescind the earlier vote authorizing the debt. And so that would be another way to get that off the books.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I'll say one thing, Catherine.
Go ahead.
This doesn't, the regular way this would happen is the person who's selling the land and they want to change the use of the land from being protected to something else would send to the town a form that says you have 120 days notice to make an offer of right of first refusal. I'm being very simple. I'm not a lawyer, don't want to be one. But they have that 120 days to do two things. One, look for the money, have a town meeting, and get it approved. Now, I'm just trying to say the other side of this is the normal course would be in May, the client says, the homeowner says, I want to sell my property. They give us 120 days notice. And then we go from there and CPC meets, says, yeah, we want to do it. Town meeting is set. We get a quorum. We vote it up or down and it goes in as being done. I just want to make sure that's the other way of doing it. And that's still a valid way of doing it. So don't feel like one can't work if the other one can't work. So we can discuss it. I just wanted to let you know what the other option is.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just quickly, yeah, I think it's important to note that all this would do is, in comparison to the description that you just gave, is there wouldn't be a requirement for a town meeting vote in between. But there still would be negotiations. It would still be subject to a PNS. All of those other requirements would still apply. In addition, it's still possible that a different piece of property comes up to acquire, even if you had approved this. And then this authorization wouldn't extend to that, and you'd still wind up pursuing the kind of more typical route of getting the offer of first refusal and proceeding from there. So this would be very limited in that way. It would only apply to the properties that are identified.
Great, thank you for filling that in. So, but there are options, so don't feel like we're being stuck one way or the other. Catherine?
This will shock some people who know me, but I have a process question, Lauren, since you're on the call. Two, actually. So let me back up just a second. I think there's a general belief that acquiring open space in this town is very important. So that's just my editorializing, but we still have to have some process. So if this goes through, we recommend, town meeting approves it, there's an authorization, and a property is purchased and a bond is written. And so there's a yearly cost, for the bond. Does as we've been doing it for town hall, does there need to be a separate application every year for the following year's bond payment to the CPC, which I guess we're obligated to pay, but does it have to happen every year? So every town meeting?
Mr. Chair, through you. In my opinion, it does not. The town is obligated, the CPC is obligated. Typically, I would see a yearly bond obligation payment in the regular administrative warrant article that does the set aside. So set aside for this, set aside for that, pay the outstanding bond amounts. The other option is for it to actually appear in the budget, which it does in other towns. It appears in their debt service budget with a recommendation of the CPC noted, and it's approved just like any other debt service is approved. So I don't think it requires an application each year. Even if the CPC changed its mind, in my opinion, there would still be an obligation under state law to fund the debt service through the bond. Through the CPA funds.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then just my last, I guess, comment question is, I think to Rick's point, there are two options, and to your point, or maybe more than two, and to your point, Lauren, I understand where we're going with this, but I think what I'm perceiving is the difference between what's being asked and an option of just getting one property and then going through a process of a right of first refusal, is that the CPC is authorizing the purchase of any of 5 properties through a bond in this authorization, that's in this application, without town meeting input. I just want to make sure I'm right about this, without town meeting input on the individual property that may happen to come forward. And I think that is what's different. So it's, yes, there are 5 properties, I guess there are 5 on the list. And this authorization would allow the select board, the select board without town meeting to acquire through a bond, any one of those 5. But no town meeting would be required.
So what I
After
would
that.
say is no additional town meeting vote would be required. Essentially, when town meeting votes this time, it would be saying, yes, we agree that those 5 properties are important for open space purposes or whatever the particular goal is. And, you know, either it's a landscape preservation or it's a open space, whatever it might be. The town meeting would be saying that right now. Yes, we value all of those properties and we would be happy to see any of them acquired. So, so there would be a discussion about that. There would also be, you know, there would be public parts to any of the transaction. Typically, once a municipality has signed a PNS and you know, the plan is negotiated, then that information becomes public and people are aware of it. So there would be time there as well. The select board would also have to authorize the borrowing at an open meeting. So there would be another chance for discussion.
Thank you. Some more talking points. I think we would need to be prepared to answer, Patricia, to your point earlier. It's a lot of education around this, which is fine. We just need to be aware.
Correct. Do we have any other questions from the team here tonight? Any other comments from our guests or? Well, I think that was great. Thank you for coming, Lauren, Ms. Goldberg, Steve, arranging that. It was great. Thank you for coming. I know it's nighttime. The thing I just want to get back to, because we need to have something in our official record that we do have a written opinion from bond counsel and counsel that this is okay, and we need to cite examples of towns that have done this, so that we can go out on a limb, but I want to make sure that we know exactly what limb we're going out on.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't know that we're going to find other examples. It would be hard to trace that, because essentially it would be a town meeting vote that authorized the acquisition of one or more parcels. You know, I do think that a written opinion from council is something that you can rely on. And, you know, I will speak with the bond counsel I spoke with to see if I can cite to his name as well, so that you have that reassurance. But again, in my opinion, there is no legal prohibition against it. It's a policy decision on whether it makes sense for the town.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank
I'm sorry, please.
Before I go, were there questions about the conservation money going to the conservation trust for the same purpose? Because I'm happy to answer questions about that too, if there are.
I think maybe the question we had was more of a strategic question of the town, and around how they plan to use. There's these large sums of money being requested, both bonding and cash, and how their plans are coming together to do this, because it's a lot of ask. It's a big ask for open space in 1 year. But I don't know that, did we have any technical questions, team, on funding the conservation fund?
I don't think so.
That's a state program.
So.
That seems pretty solid. It was just the strategy around that.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to come back at any time, and whatever assistance I can offer, I'm happy to provide it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a great
you.
night.
Nice to see you, Lauren. Take care.
Okay, you too.
Good.
Good night.
Good. I hope we got our questions answered, everybody. Thank you. I think now we can kind of go into that part with Kate and Steve here. If they could give us a little kind of background on how this is all working together, I think we'd appreciate that.
Well, I think, you know, coming out of last meeting, the question kept coming up, why is it 2 applications and not 1? Really, I think it's a simple answer is it's 2 separate requests, right? You could do one, you could do the other, you could do both in there, but they're both working towards the same purpose. It is to be prepared to acquire property if it was to come for sale for open space and recreation and preservation. So, you know, based on my discussions with other communities and Greenbelt, that when these properties come for sale, sometimes it is the time frame can be pretty quick, and it is difficult for communities to mobilize even in that 90-day time frame. And for us to, when we're approaching these landowners, when they're trying to decide what they want to do they want to sell it to a developer? Do they want to sell it to a town? You know, what is it that they want to do? It allows us to have liquidity in cash and have bonding authorization behind us to be taken seriously, you know, and compete with other interests. You know, so that's really, I've heard, you know, anecdotally when Mrs. Streeter passed away, that, you know, how unprepared the town was, and that, you know, how important it is that we preserve that property. You know, just general, even just residents stopping by, abutters and things like that. And, you know, the master plan has highlighted our, you know, how important it is to the town to preserve it. And I've heard, you know, anecdotal stories from the past where we've lost out on opportunities, and had we been more prepared. And this is really, you know, one, or I guess two ways to be prepared. They're not the only two ways. There's other avenues, but, you know, I'm basically doing my job and Kate's doing her job to make sure we're as prepared as we can. So that's why these requests are here before you. And, you know, ultimately it's your decision to make the recommendation at town meeting, but that's really what we're trying to do. We're really just trying to move the town of Wenham forward with its goals, and to make us, you know, put us in an advantageous place for negotiation, you know, and be ready to acquire these parcels.
Kate, let's hear from Kate first, and Alden, I'll get to you right next.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to stress the importance of negotiating power. So especially with the conservation fund, if there is $1.5 million, it makes the town look very serious for purchasing. There is no reason why we cannot proactively go to the heirs of the Streeter property and say, hey, we do have some funds aside. You know, we've already talked to them. Steve and I have already spoken with them before, but we can, and we would like to pursue that conversation more. Right now, we have no leverage to talk to them. We have no funding. We are pursuing state funding. With state funding, you often need a match. So if we have no funding set aside, we really have no leverage. We would like to negotiate before it hits right of first refusal, because when those 100 days start, we all know that that's a lot to do within 120 days. So this just gives us the best possible way to acquire these open space parcels.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
to add, you know, just quickly, just to add, you know, the comment was made about it's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but just, you know, keep in mind that Kate pulled together the examples. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's several communities that have conservation that they pull annually, similar to how the Affordable Housing Trust is funded annually here. And when you look at their total sums of money that they've drawn down through CPC funds over the years, you know, it's in, some of them are in $3+ million, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, you know, this, you know, I know the email that got forwarded to me with, you know, Stuart, you know, surprised at the dollar amount. It's like, well, it's a big ask at once, but it's the CPC, you know, has been kind of kidding this money in a way for open space reasons. And other communities are doing the same thing. They're just moving, you know, $80,000, $100,000, $250,000 a year into the conservation fund. Mm-hmm. For the same exact purpose that we're proposing here. So like these dollar amounts are not unheard of, and certainly not out of the norm.
Yes, I spoke to the conservation agent in Groton the other day, and that's what they do. They take their 10%, sometimes more, sometimes less. I think this year they're asking for $400,000, which is well over the 10% for a town like Groton. And they have bought a lot of land with it, but they've transferred over $2.4 million. So this is happening in a lot of progressive towns that are really conservation minded. We just never did it here before. So
Correct.
why
And so,
we are
so I just want to
asking-
give you some feedback, which I right or wrong, whatever, we've gotten 3 huge requests for these nebulous funds this year for the first time, and they all came at the same time. So we're trying to digest all of that and get the facts that we can individually from them all as well. So I appreciate where you are, but it's a little shocking for some. I think me being new, and other people being on here for a while that all these requests have come in at once. So, but thank
Very
you.
understandable, Rick. Very
Thank you,
understandable.
Steve. Alden, to you, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, very briefly. Thank you both for helping me understand it a lot better. I think to Patricia's way of thinking that if this gets to town meeting, you're going to need some talking points. I would suggest a talking point is to describe this as a more complete strategy. It's not two halves, it's a single strategy. And it's a complete strategy because you're covering both ends of the spectrum of how you use CPC money and leverage that to the maximum impact on purchasing any, or maybe someday over time, all of those 5 properties. So using the word, it's a complete strategy instead of, it's not fragmented. There's no competition between the Conservation Commission and the Select Board. So we needed to hear that, and I want to commend you both for explaining that. Thank you.
And just another point to, keeping them separate but together, right? They're serving one purpose, but
Right.
also don't want to have them, live or die together. So the event in the, in the situation at town meeting, if one was to pass, and I don't want the assumption to be, well, if one fails, the other one also has to fail. So they can be independent.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you. And it was good to hear how, as Alden said, just to reconfirm that, it was good for me to hear that one's for a down payment potentially, one's for financing, right? That, as Alden said to me, a kind of simple way of looking at it, that's more complete package. We can give you some money now to take the property off the market, and we already have authorization to proceed with the bond. And that to me is pretty strong. So,
right.
Other questions from the team here?
Rick, I think we've covered everything. I think we need to move on.
We are. Good. Perfect. We're going to move on. Thank you, Steve and Kate, for joining us tonight. You're, of course, welcome to stay, but we have some other business to get to.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good
Kate.
night.
Thank you, Steve.
Is Kristen or her representative here yet this evening?
I think Ellison, are you here?
Allison?
Hi. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I just logged on. Are you ready for us, or is there another presentation?
No, I think it's you.
Okay.
We could do, unless you're not
I
ready,
just
we can.
texted Kristen,
Nope.
she's literally logging on right now, so I think that might be her coming on.
Yeah, we don't mind hanging just for a minute. We're a little
Thank you
early.
so much, guys. Yep, she's great. I'm just gonna let her know we are up.
Nope,
And
just
Rick,
hang.
is
I'm gonna-
Allison doing the tea house presentation? Is that what he's
Allison
doing?
and
Kristen is doing it.
okay,
Kristen
great.
Sleeper. I mean, I'm
Kristen.
here as well. We've been working on it together, but Joe, you're gonna share your screen
Yes. Yep.
when we're ready to go.
Mhm.
All right. Hi, everyone. Am I up?
Yep, you are on.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Welcome,
Thank
Kristen,
you.
to our meeting. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, so thank you for understanding that. And Joe, I think, is ready for your presentation to be posted, and we can get going. Thank you.
Fabulous.
All right, Kristen, let me just share the screen real quick. Everyone see that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Slideshow. Let's see. Okay, Kristen, whenever you're ready.
Okay, hold on, I'm just gonna make this bigger so I can see it. There we go. Yeah. All right, then will I just ask you to switch the screens as we go?
Yes, sure. Just tell me next slide.
Right, perfect. All right, so hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Sleeper. I am the current president of the WVIS, and I'm going to give my presentation on the restoration and sustainable preservation of the tea house. Next slide, please. All right, hold on. I'm having my slides are very wacky here. Let me just try to do something. I can't see them. I apologize. What am I doing here? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
No,
trying to do
take
this-
your time. Don't
Right,
panic.
thank you.
We're good.
Trying to do this in my office and this is not going well. Let's see if I can make that go.
You can see things just fine, Kirsten.
Okay, as long as you can see it. So I can, it's a little cut off, but I think I remember it well enough that I should be okay. I apologize if I stumble a little bit. All right, so we are the Wenham Village Improvement Society. We were formed in 1893. We're one of the longest running organizations of its kind in the country. We just celebrated our 130th year this past year. We are dedicated to the enhancement of Wenham and to the care and preservation of the Tea House campus, which includes the Wenham Tea House, the Tea House Playground, and the Monument Street Tennis and Pickleball Courts. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of some of the things that WVS has done in the community recently. So we do maintain the Tea House Playground and we do maintain the Monument Street tennis and pickleball courts, which were recently resurfaced thanks to generous CPA grant and funds. And every time I've been driving by this past season, looks like the town is really enjoying those. So we do thank you for that. We try to secure and maintain tenants that we think are going to entice the residents to kind of want to shop, visit and shop and dine in Wenham Village. We currently have our long-standing tenant Irresistibles, and then we have a new tenant that is going to be coming in named Plat du Jour. They are currently kind of getting themselves organized. We do award scholarships to Wenham High School graduates. We started that program in 1951 and have given over $700,000 to date. The most recent thing we've done over the last 2 years is we have given $50,000 in grants to the Wenham Museum to launch and support their Camp Whirligig. And we previously ran the Tea House Summer Park program from 1935 to 2019. And we do support many other local nonprofits. Next slide, please. So the historic Wenham Tea House. So this beautiful building was built in 1916. It's one of the longest operating tea houses in the country, and it is an iconic landmark in Wenham Village, and it's a place for our community to gather, shop, and dine. Next slide, please. So we underwent a capital needs assessment in March of 2022, and there were several action items that were identified and rated based upon when they should be completed, and the items that were in the now category, which were kind of 0 to 2 years, puts us into March 2024. So we're basically at the end of what they recommended, the time frame. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that we're hoping to address right now. That is some repairs to the door, exterior and gutter wood rot and painting, and then addressing the windows. They also noted some concerns with some interior finishes, and Plat du Jour is doing some renovation inside the building that will address some of those. It was brought up that we could be helping our energy footprint with solar panels, with some low flow faucet aerators and some split system heat pumps. And these are going to be addressed as part of our future sustainability plan, which we hope to be implementing in the next year or two. Next slide, please. So these are some pictures, which have gotten a little bit distorted, but I think we can see of just kind of showing the general. This is the wood door frame of the front entrance of the tea house. Just it's you know, kind of chipping, it's rotting. There's some wood rot up at the corner and at the top. Next slide, please. Then we have the wood gutter rot. The one side is evidently in much worse shape than the other, but really that's basically non-functional gutter at this point. Right, next slide. We're gonna look at some of our windows here. You can see there's just lots of flaking paint, lots of chipping paint, lots of potential rot, and then just the level of inefficiency, which we can't visualize, but we can imagine there also. Next slide, please. Again, just some more shots of the kind of chipping paint and the potential rot up on the dormers there. We're not sure exactly what we're going to find, but that area between the roof where it hits has definitely taken some wear and tear. Next slide, please. And then this is the back of the tea house, of which there's a fair amount of wood rot. Also, as you can see, it looks like some bird or something has made a home. Flaking paint, a fair amount of rotting up by that top window. And then these bottom windows also with the roof, there's a fair amount of rot. We're not sure how much is there, but we can kind of visualize a fair amount at this point. All right, next slide, please. So what are our goals? So our goals are to restore the exterior elements of this treasured Wenham landmark. We are also looking to improve our energy efficiency. New windows will decrease our oil consumption, and that will align with the mission of the newly formed Town of Wenham Climate Action and Sustainability Committee. We underwent an energy audit in November of 2023 with a plan to implement some further energy efficiency improvements throughout this year and into the following year. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? Let's start with windows. So we are looking to replace 51 windows. We like to remove the old windows and replace them with Marvin Elevate windows. These are a high quality, historically accurate, double hung wood interior with fiberglass exterior window. They have simulated divided lights with a spacer bar detail, which is the highest kind of level of lights that you can get without them being actually true lights like they have in handmade wood windows, but this is as close as we can get with the detail. And these windows were approved by the Historic District Commission back in December of 2023 on December 19th. They are highly efficient. So the U factor measures how well a window insulates, and the lower the U factor, the better the window insulates. So you can see the Marvin Elevate have a U factor of 0.29. I did some research. I don't know exactly the U factor of our current old windows, but looking at the data of them, how some have storms, some don't, I estimated, and this was generously at 2.8, it's probably much higher. So that would be a 10-fold increase in our efficiency just by replacing these windows. And it is recommended that a U factor of 0.2 to 0.4 is what we should have in our climate here in New England. Next slide, please. And then we need to address the exterior and gutter wood rot and do some painting. We are looking to remove the original wood gutters and the copper downspouts that are there in the front of the building. About 2/3 of the building has already had these wood gutters removed and just no gutters put up. So we're looking to kind of address that. We need to restore the fascia that's there, that's probably rotted. And then we're looking to install new copper gutters along the entire front of the building with downspouts, and then install new aluminum gutters in the rear. And this, we went up in front of the Historic District Commission just I believe a few days ago, and we have approval for that. We are looking to address the wood rot and restore the shingles that we can, and then replace any that are past restoration, and then restore the front door frame and paint the front door, and then looking to prep and paint the entire building. And this would include the shutters, the entry door, and the chimney. Next slide, please. So what is this going to cost? So we have calculated our estimates, and it's going to cost about $115,000. The estimates that we've gathered are listed here. We're going to use Grand Banks as our supplier of windows, and 51 Marvin Elevate double hung insert windows are going to run us just a little bit over $52,000. McFarlane Construction, this quote of $17,850 includes removing the current windows, installing 51 replacement windows, removing all the old storm windows that are present, and doing any kind of necessary repair work to our entry door and the door frame. We're estimating the wood rot repair to be possibly around $10,000, and this is an estimate because we're not able to get an actual number because they're not sure how much rot they're going to discover once the work commences. And this is going to be billed by hours worked in materials. So we kind of looked at how many hours we thought it might be and kind of came up with this, but this number is an estimate. It could be much higher. It could be a little bit lower. We are working with the Clearview Painting for $21,800. They're going to prep and paint the outside of the tea house with the shutters, door, and chimneys, as I mentioned. And then Reynolds gutters, was just over $12,000, and that's to remove the existing rotted wood gutter, repair the fascia that needs to, remove the aluminum gutters in the back, and then install copper gutters and downspouts across the front, and aluminum gutters and downspouts in the back. So we are requesting $100,000 in CPA funds to help us complete this project. We are hoping to complete this project this coming summer, late spring, early summer would be fabulous for us. Next slide, please. So community support. I'm anticipating there being a fair amount of, or robust, I should say, community support, given kind of how the tea house is viewed amongst our community. I did some digging along the Wenham Master Plan community website, looking at the survey highlights, and the tea house ranked #1 out of the 5 special places in Wenham in this master plan community engagement summary. Survey results also identify the tea house as integral to achieving community goals of enhancing historic and cultural resources and preserving the town's character and maintaining a vibrant downtown area. Other priorities that were highlighted by residents include trying to do some better marketing of Wenham's history and making Wenham a historic tourism destination, with repeated mentions of the tea house and that. So I think that the community has identified the tea house as an important landmark for our community. Next slide, please. So I want to thank you for your consideration. We are very much looking forward to restoring the tea house, and we're looking to really preserve it for the future generations. And this is just a fun photo from our annual meeting, which celebrated our 130th year. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation.
Thank you, Kirsten, for taking the time. Wow, taking the time out to be with us tonight. It says I'm still muted. I don't know. But thank you for your presentation. What I'd like to do is just ask any of our members tonight if they have any questions or comments, and we can keep going. Leo, please.
I love the tea house. I've been in town for over 50 years, and I've frequented it over the years. It was always under the same management, I think, until about 15 years ago. And since then, we've had 3 different managers. I love the tea house, but that's not the barometer I use to judge whether I want to apply CPA money. The barometer I use is how much have you collected, raised money on yourself towards this project? How much has the tea house raised itself towards this project among the citizens?
So we have not started. We have recently did an annual appeal, which is kind of funds our scholarship and the grant museums. We have not yet started a fund as to reaching out to the community to secure this the kind of funding along the way. We are just kind of early in this process still, so we have not yet secured additional funds that have been kind of specifically raised to this project versus funds that we use normally towards our scholarships and grants.
I see. Thank you. That's an important barometer to me, though. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trudy, please. I saw Trudy's hands first, Janet. Then we go right to you.
That's
okay,
fine.
Thank you, Trudy.
So I have a question and then I have a comment to, when did you say you anticipate this work starting or being completed?
We would love to start sometime this spring or early summer.
Okay, because you know that the funds are not allocated until July.
Yes, we do know that.
Okay. I think Leo answered or asked a couple of questions that I also had in mind about fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just concerned that we have another project in front of us for maintenance. And it's a little disturbing that it sounds like you don't have a budget for maintenance.
Well, we do, and we do the maintenance as it comes along every year. Typically, I think COVID really kind of threw it threw everything to the wayside. I should say we had a summer program we were running. Then COVID came, we couldn't run that anymore. Then we decided, with our board has been sadly dwindling by the years, so we are now quite a small group with not really any volunteers whatsoever, other than board members, to kind of try to keep this going. So we're doing kind of the best we can with what we have right now. We are hoping to rejuvenate, as part of my presidential legacy, as short as it's been, is trying to rejuvenate some appreciation for the Wenham Village Improvement Society and what we do, and try to get us back to kind of where we were back in the 80s and the 90s, when we had many members and many volunteers. So I think we're looking to do that. We do have, we do have an investment endowment that over the years that generates interest income for us. We are trying not to touch into that principle and use that stuff for our goods around community. But, you know, depending upon kind of how we feel like the community is receiving us and going again to the tea house, we could potentially, again, we might have to dive into that a little bit to fund this project, which I think is something that we're hoping to not do, because we really would like to keep that that principle untouched and kind of that's our security blanket for the next 130 years. So I think, but we do have funds, and we do spend, you know, without, you know, we break even / lose a little bit of money on the tea house every year in terms of what we get from our tenants and what we put in terms of maintenance and ground keep for the entire campus. It ends up, we lose money. But we kind of vision that the tea house and its property is important to the town. So we need to maintain tenants, and to do that, we can't be raising rates and making things kind of crazy, because then we'll lose tenants and then we'll really be in trouble. So we're kind of, like I said, doing kind of the best we can at this point, but I would say that our society is not as robust as we would like it to be, and we are hoping to build from that. So, you know, we still have a lot of other expenses in our future, but maintenance prior, I believe, in like the early 2000s, they would address one side of the building. Apparently every year they would have someone come and take a look at the back, repair any rot, touch up the paint, then move the next year, do the following side. So basically every 4 years.
I'm sorry, I get it. So, okay, thank you.
Janet, please.
I'm curious, the summer program, did the summer program provide money that helped you to run? I know you stopped that program because of the pandemic. So I guess it's a twofold question. Did that give you some money which helped you? And why has that program not come back? Because it was very successful, at least when my children were younger.
So that program was very successful in probably you know, I'm sure up until probably, I think the early probably 2010s, I believe. And then it started to lose money. When I joined the board, which was in 2018, it had actually operated at about a $50,000 loss. So it cost us $50,000 to put that program on, which obviously is not sustainable. The Patton Park is our theory that kind of basically killed the tea house program. You know, we were running a fun park program that was half day in the morning. If it rained, you had to come get your kid. It was kind of drop in, not scheduled. And then Patton Park with its swimming pool and scheduled activities and early drop off and late pickup. And if it rains, you don't have to get your kid. Pretty much sealed our fate. And then COVID really took it away from us.
Janet, did that get your answer, Janet?
So
understood. Thank you. I just one other quick question.
Sure.
I may have read this incorrectly, but did WVIS, are they giving money to the Wenham Museum for a program they're running?
Yes. So since we stopped running our program, the tea house park program, but knowing that was one of our main goals through the years, the Wenham Museum approached us, I think probably 2 years ago at this point, with a proposition and asked us for money to help fund the upstart of their new camp, which is Camp Whirligig. And we gave them $25,000 last year as seed money to help them start that program. And they came to us and asked for $25,000 again this year, which we have committed to also. So yes, we've given them $50,000 over the last 2 years to start that camp, in the hope that will kind of take on our past mission of providing summer entertainment for Wenham children.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen and Allison, for joining tonight.
Thank you.
And as I know, our deliberations begin next Wednesday. So we will keep in touch. And if there are any questions, I know Joe will collect them and then reach out and ask for answers. But I think we got them answered tonight, right? Everybody, we're good? Great.
Let me, try to clarify one quick point just in case it comes up. Our eligibility application had much different numbers on that. So I don't know if anybody witnessed those or not, but I just wanted to clarify that the numbers we're looking for are the ones that I gave in the presentation.
Joe, could we go over that at some point just to make sure we tie them out?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone's time.
Yes, thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Great. I think we're done with presentations. We made it through all of them. Woohoo! Give us all a little bit of applause for that one. The only thing I wanted to discuss a little bit about is the deliberation process as we begin next week. And people may have no opinion, but I've seen some best practices where they have a little guide sheet of the type of categories and questions that are important to them and a rating system. I didn't know if anybody wanted to get into that. Have they used something like that in the past that's been helpful when they're trying to evaluate more clearly?
How about if we get into it when I'm less tired? It's 8:07.
Then we can do that. We can do that. We can do that.
Really,
wanna do-
I don't mean that to be a big negative, but you know what? We've done so much. This is a lot tonight. It was really a lot to think about. And my brain's kind of done. Leo, Rick, is that a problem?
No, let me just close out for the evening and then we can continue that. Other people agree? We'll continue this?
I agree.
Topic number 7? Okay, great. We're gonna continue.
I think we need to talk about it. I'm just like, I need to spend some time thinking about all what we processed tonight,
No.
which was great.
It's all good.
Agreed.
It's all good. It's a team effort here. Let's just make it so. So what I'll maybe do is look at an example or two and maybe ask Joe to send that around to folks. So we'll have something just to get you thinking next week of how do we
Right,
structure our
exactly.
conversation. If you're comfortable with that, I will do that. Okay?
I love it. That's great. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. And I will then, any other items that not previously anticipated in the past 48 hours? Trudy, I see something.
Janet, bear with me for just another few minutes. So nobody else has seen the minutes for the past 2 meetings because there's been a transcriber. Rick had asked me to review them before we brought them to the board to approve. And I don't know how we can do this, but the minutes that I've seen list the members, supposedly, it just says committee members. If she could go back and just change that to present members or something, because it just makes it look like that's all the members of the
Right.
board.
Right.
So maybe just state that those were present. In one set of minutes, she just referred to Stewart as Stewart. So if we could get his last name in there so people know who Stewart is. And just a clarification, it almost sounds like the way the minutes were taken that Joe's application for bonding of the town hall is that there's still ongoing projects. And I don't believe that is to be true. We're just paying off the bonding, correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, so I guess we just need to review that part because it was very confusing and I'm sure somebody in another state or country that's taking minutes may not understand what's going on here. But the way that I read the minutes, it just was very confusing. It looked like that we've got an ongoing project that we're paying for.
Sure, and I'll definitely send these revisions to the company, the vendor we've been using. I will say that, even now with the select board, they've been working with them a few months, there's been some revisions still, but as they are working with, if they work with us a little bit more in the future, they might become a little more accustomed to our business. So I would think it would improve, but I'll definitely, send these revisions to them.
So I just want to get that cleared up before it all came back to the board for a review.
No, I
Approval.
agree. The way it was
Trudy, that-
listed, it appeared that, to me, it seemed like the people they were listing, it was just the people that were present, not the full, and it should be the full committee listed, I would think, right at the top.
No, it should be just who's present, but it just didn't state that they were present. That the
okay.
members that she
Okay, right.
Right,
listed,
it did, and
because I wasn't listed. So it makes it sound like to somebody else that that's the entire committee, but those were really just those in attendance.
present.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yep.
And
Yeah,
that's
so
how
that's
I
all.
kind of, in this
So
new
maybe
model
it
where-
should say present and absent.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. In our new model, as I understand it, that will be the role of the clerk, is to find these things
Right.
out and get back to Joe, whoever the service is, to make these adjustments based on their knowledge of our committee before they go then to the full team. So
Yes,
you did a great job, Judy. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
I just earned
Thank
my
you.
dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Do
Give
I
her-
get
give her a
that?
raise.
Are we good there?
I'm good.
Leo, are you ready, Leo?
Mr. Chairman, will you entertain a motion to adjourn? If so, so moved.
So,
Seconded, Leo.
okay. We
Make a
do have
roll
to do a
call.
roll, we do have to do a roll call because we are on Zoom. Alden,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Trudy,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
and Rick is yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so
One
much.
week
Good
from
evening.
tonight.
Thank you. Good night.